Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video form of a blog post which I wrote in May of 2014 called Regionalisms in Your Writing. And if you're a booktuber instead of an author tuber, I'd like to know in the comments down below about books you've read that had used regionalisms in a way that you liked or in a way that you didn't like. And if you've read books in languages other than English, please let me know about certain regionalisms in those other languages. I'm really curious about all these different things because we tend to only know about our own regionalisms in the areas we've lived in, or maybe we have personal connections to these places, but we don't tend to think outside of our own field of experience. So let's get down with this. The funny thing about regionalisms is that you probably don't realize they're specific to your area till you go somewhere else or speak with people from another place. Suddenly they think you're a hick for using certain words or expressions or can't understand what something means. Well, I'm a proud native Pittsburgher. I've lived most of my life by upstate New York, and so don't have a vocabulary peppered with Pittsburghese. However, there are still a number of expressions I've only relatively recently found out are peculiar to the Pittsburgh area. For example, we often leave out the to be infinitive in conjunction with the verbs like, need, and want. For example, the plants need watered, the baby wants fed, and the dog likes played with. We also say things along the lines of, where is he at? And I genuinely didn't know this was considered like bad grammar by most other English speakers until some, people began leaving what they felt were like helpful comments on like some blog posts I wrote for contests back when Brenda Lee Drake was still doing contests and I was trying for traditional publication. Like they said, oh, I used the line the place they were at, and someone said, oh, that's not good grammar. And I said, like, that's just how I talk where I'm from. I genuinely had no idea that was considered like, proper grammar. And when I see, people on like Facebook posts, making fun of someone who's, like anti-science and stuff, I'm in a lot of pro-science Facebook groups, and when like someone uses regionalisms, like, the baby once played with or something like that, or the dog once walked, and they'll like make fun of that person. Oh, you need to use to be, and I'm like telling them, look, I don't want to like defend these people because they're like anti-science nut jobs and almost everything else, and sometimes they're not even like good people personally, but this isn't something they have like control over. It's not bad grammar, it's just how people speak in certain areas. They're not, that's not evidence of like even more evidence of them being like a terrible, stupid, ignorant person. So and there are other Pittsburghese expressions I didn't find out until I was an adult are only Pittsburghese, like for example what people call sunny side eggs, or sunny side up eggs. We call them dippy eggs, and that's just, I can't use the term everyone else uses. I'll always call them dippy eggs, and we'll say, like, for example, red up, redded up, redding up for cleanup. That's from, I believe, Pennsylvania Dutch. And the word ridgers, these are people who live on the ridge of the Laurel Mountains in southwestern Pennsylvania. They're known for their horrible manners. Like, for example, they'll like leave dirty dishes in the sink for days, or like they won't put the dishes away after they've been dry. They're just hanging out in the drain board, like my ex's parents, who are still mentally in the Soviet Union, would always do. They'll throw like wet towels on the floor after they use the shower, like leave the bed unmade, or just like have a horrible, like dirty, filthy house, and they're not even ashamed when strangers come in and see it. And there was one time when I was 13, when I was showing my parents something I had written. This was, I stopped showing them anything I had written around the time I was like 14, for reasons that are like too long and complicated to get into here. But anyway, I used the line, and they had these three characters threw their towels on the floor like ridgers after they used a big communal shower in a campground. And my parents said that you can't use the word ridgers. Nobody outside of southwestern Pennsylvania will know what you're talking about. So that's just something you have to be aware of them. But there are a few like Pittsburghese expressions I will never use. I think the word gum band sounds stupid. That's what they call a rubber band. And my plural form of you is use guys, or use, which obviously I'm not from New York City, but I did pick it up because I lived fairly close to New York City, like 3.5 hours away. But there were like enough people in the area from New York or had contact with New Yorkers, and it kind of eventually like rubbed off on me. So it feels natural. It's not something I'm forcing myself to say. It just naturally comes out. Pittsburghers and people in that area, their plural form of you is yins, which sounds freaking hickish to me, but I'll discuss that more later in the comments. Sometimes I find expressions like these creeping into my writing, though other times I manage to leave them out. If I'm not writing a Pittsburghese character, it probably wouldn't be correct to leave them in. And also another Pittsburghese, Pittsburgh area expression. I've always used it for my grandfather and like great grandfather and etc. Grandpap, or great grandpap, etc. And I guess I kind of like understood instinctively, though not like explicitly from hearing anybody like tell me that was considered like kind of like a hickish word, because all my other like peers at school like would call their like grandfathers like grandpa or granddad, like granddaddy, grandpop or something, or use like a word like I know there are like other regional words for like grandparents, like a mima and I think papa in the South, and the sometimes people use like the Greek words for grandparents and just all sorts of other words like that. But I always call them grandpap, and I don't care who thinks I'm a hick for using those words. That's not one word I can code switch out of most of the time. When I know like certain people will judge my language poorly, if like if they're upper class swells or something, of course I would make an extra effort not to use like Pittsburghese pronunciations or like regionalisms, but that's just one word. It's part of who I am. Why should I control it or like restrain it just because I don't think people will look at me positively? From having so many Orthodox friends, I've picked up the grammatically incorrect habit of using by as an all-purpose preposition, and that's also used in not just in the Yiddish language and German and the Slavic languages. It's like u, the letter u in Russian, which like basically is like an all-purpose preposition for like so many different things. And I know that's beyond the topic of this video, but it is like used much differently than it is in English. Examples of how this quasi-Yiddishism, which is as I mentioned, also found in Slavic languages and German, is used. We ate by the rabbi's family last Shabbos. I'm being by my friend for the holidays. She was really acting up by nap time. We met by the bar mitzvah. He stayed by the Kagans and was by shul for the baby naming. We studied by Boston University for graduate school. I know this isn't proper English and that I shouldn't use this kind of expression for a character whose native language isn't Yiddish, Polish, Russian, etc. And I do, when my Russian-speaking characters use English, I do like they use the word like by when they're talking about like, oh, we stayed by the boarding house when we first immigrated or something like that. But when they're like using Russian or whatever other language they use that does use that something that translates literally as by, they will like use like the way we would express it like properly in English, like for example, we stayed at or we lived with, because you obviously have to consider what's grammatically correct and what you're just like forcing regionalisms into a language that they don't like work well with. They only work well like in translation or something like that. It's the same way I try to pronounce creek properly among my New York friends, though since there's a Sand Creek Road in the Albany area, sometimes I find myself using the crick pronunciation I picked up from my Pennsylvania roots, and there are a few Pittsburghese pronunciations I picked up from my grandparents and other relatives, though my parents themselves don't actually use these pronunciations. It's like really interesting how people acquire language. Like for example, the top of a building, ROOF. I've like long pronounced it rough, a roof, like and my parents say roof, and it's very hard to get myself to use the so-called proper pronunciation. I'm so used to calling it a roof. So that's again something it's like very hard for me to code switch out of, even if I would be talking to a bunch of like upper class swells who would look down on me and judge me poorly for using a pronunciation like that. If your characters live in New York City, unless they're recent transplants or don't have deep roots in the city, you'll want to make sure they say, for example, online instead of inline. And I went back through my book, Little Ragdoll, before it was published in the first edition, to like change any instances of inline to online, because that's just how native New Yorkers talk, and these are like characters with like very, very deep like family roots in the city. They wouldn't be saying like inline like a more recent person would if they just moved there. It doesn't matter if you think it's grammatically incorrect or sounds weird. It's just how people in the city talk. The same way you shouldn't project your own regionalisms onto characters from different areas. And also, I'm speaking of different language regionalisms. One I'm using in my alternative history is the word babo for father. B-A-B-B-O. That's long been the word in Tuscan for like referring to your father. It's kind of, I guess, well, at least like in the Middle Ages, maybe. I don't know if it's still seen this way in the modern era, like a more like childish or like simple word for your father, like the difference between like daddy and dad or father, so like when you older, I guess, or particularly if you're like more like upper class and from like a so-called respectable family, you would graduate to calling your father padre, although in most of the rest of Italy, people call their father papa, and that is the correct pronunciation, because if you pronounce it papa, you're referring to the Pope, although I am aware, like a few years ago, I discovered in the 19th century, in the early 20th century, upper-class twits used to pretentiously call their parents mama and papa, which sounds just so stupid and pretentious to me. So like if in Italian, or I think like Spanish is another language where this pronunciation is also correct, call their father papa, they're not being a pretentious little twit, they're just, using the pronunciation that's correct in that language. It's one thing for me, as a third-person omniscient narrator, to refer to dippy eggs or pop, but a character from Florida or Maine wouldn't have those terms in his or her vocabulary, and pop means soda, by the way. That's, I know that varies depending on which part of the country, and I'm told like some areas don't even use either of those terms. I call it like Coke or cola for all kinds of pop, not just, Coke. And I know some people think pop is an incorrect term or like hickish, but, I really don't care. That's how I speak where I'm from. I'm not going to, deny my like linguistic heritage. By the same token, my characters say grandfather, grandpa, or granddad. I grew up knowing the term grandpap, but I never heard anyone else in New York using that term, so I kind of instinctively sensed I should avoid it in writing. Only in adulthood did I become aware of the fact that it's considered hickish outside of southwestern Pennsylvania and West Virginia. And I know like some of my like older relatives, or like people who are not like now deceased, I never met them, they would call their fathers pop, or not like pop, or sometimes like pap, pap, or it was pronounced like pop, and I know that many people would consider that, pretty hickish too. But again, it's just the language and the word they were taught to, call their fathers. They weren't, doing it deliberately to offend, like, upper class Tony swells who, look down on people who use certain kinds of language. Also, consider your character's socioeconomic class, in addition to their geographical background. A working class New Yorker will probably say things like oughta, wanna, gotta, gonna, and shoulda, whereas an upper-class blue blood from a Tony, Rhode Island suburb wouldn't dream of using slangy contractions. People with education and money also usually wouldn't say things like ain't, or use double negatives and improperly conjugated verbs. And there's one word two words I've used in my writing, both for my Atlantic City characters and my book Little Ragdoll, and some people who have like trying to be helpful when looking at sample pages for writing critique groups. I was in there like helpfully, circled it like, oh, this would be like one of or some of, like I write them as like one of, ONEA, and some of SOMEA, because like it comes together when they're speaking, particularly when they're from a certain like class or like demographic that uses language like that, and that's deliberately how I wrote those words and how they're speaking. It wouldn't be like correct to the characters or the story if they were like broken into two words, even if it does, look more, I guess, like refined. Like, but obviously, like people can like guess from the context they're saying like one of or some of, just, like running together in the way they talk. Oh, and I might be from Pittsburgh, but you can take me out back and shoot me if I ever say yins, yoons, yinses, yoonses. I didn't even know this expression existed till my junior year of high school, but I was too embarrassed to ask the teacher what it meant. This was when my family moved back to Pennsylvania for my junior year, as I mentioned. I talked a bit about this in the recent video I did talking about the book, The Comedy World of Stan Laurel, and how my love of Laurel and Hardy was forged in fire during that year. So anyway, I was put into an English class for writing research papers. I was the only person in that class who had been doing research papers for years already. It was like really kind of like embarrassing and humiliating for me. I was looking forward to taking a world literature class and studying Hamlet and reading some great Russian literature. Obviously, I'd been reading Russian literature on my own for quite some time, but now we were going to do it for a class as well, and doing also some great classic world literature from other places as well. But unfortunately, since we left Albany and went back to southwestern Pennsylvania, I was put into a school that I kind of felt really stupid in, because all these, like students like my age and the older kids, the seniors, they were like learning things I had already known for years, and I felt like, why didn't you just like let me graduate early if this is the like educational academic standard, or like put me in accelerated classes. I feel like so like stupid and stunted in this class. Like for example, in Spanish, the teacher at one point taught them incorrect grammar. I like asked, in a respectful, like nice way, shouldn't this verb be like whatever it was because it's in the preterite tense? And she said, oh yeah, I agree with you, but they haven't learned the preterite tense yet, and so she doesn't want to confuse them. So she's rather teach them incorrect grammar rather than like teach them properly, because oh god forbid they learn at a proper level. It's just so many things about that school made me so humiliated. But anyway, in this class for writing research papers, the teacher was holding up, the 10 commandments of research papers to have us read aloud, and it might have been 6 or something. It was thou shalt not say yins, and like I stopped reading along with the rest of the class, but I'd never encountered that word before, and like everyone else obviously seemed to know what it meant. And one girl, her name was Kristen, I believe, or Kirsten, I think it was Kristen though, and she like asked like or said why can't we use yins, like it's where we're from, and so just stupid. And anyway, this was a girl who later, when we were in a speech class, like public speaking and such, for the second half of the year, and we were in a group together to do a group speech, I suggested, oh, maybe we can do ours on anti-Semitism, and she asked in like genuine, like not knowing, like what's that? And I was like absolutely shocked, like a junior in high school, had never heard of anti-Semitism, and she like got kind of offended when I expressed this in as respectful way as I could. And then like later, I didn't know what a majorette was. She was in the school majorette team, and she laughed, oh, what's that? Like not knowing what anti-Semitism is completely different from not knowing what a freaking majorette is. Like, and like so many things about this school and the school district, I just felt like I was surrounded by, hicks, and I wasn't realizing my full academic potential. I'm not saying this, to try to sound like, oh, superior and stuff. It's just, there was just so many things I was not like up to the level I was used to learning at, and I felt like stupid, and I was learning like multiple levels like below what I was capable of. It was so much of a relief when I was able to move to Pittsfield, Massachusetts for my senior year. I was able to drop the French class I had been taking, and I'm taking Italian instead. Obviously I had been signed up to take Latin if I had stayed in Albany High School for my last 2 years of high school, but I kind of felt it was a lost cause by the time I finally got to a high school that did offer Latin again. So I took Italian in one instead of French to my senior year of high school. And I do apologize if I've been kind of like rambling and like free associating during this video instead of staying to the main point, but that's I guess just my speaking style. Like little like things I mention remind me of personal stories, and if that makes you like click out of the video because it's not staying on topic 100% of the time, I don't make videos for people with short attention spans. I'm fine with my New York City characters saying yous and yous guys. Obviously I use that term myself, and like Southerners will say y'all, and people from the UK will say you lot, although I've been in the South for 4 years now, going on 5. Like I didn't come here by choice. That's a really long tragic story. But anyway, like y'all has never naturally come into my vocabulary because that's not where I'm from, and it's not something I've naturally picked up from all this time I've been living here. So that's another something you want to consider with characters. You don't just move to a new region of the country and immediately begin using all these regionalisms as if you like always lived there. That's one thing that annoys me. People who like move to a new place and like within 5 minutes they're like acting like they've lived here their like entire lives, and it's their like established home, and these people they've barely met are their BFFs. And on that note, please don't phonetically render an accent unless it's done judiciously for a substantial reason. That's a whole topic for a whole nother thing, like phonetically rendering accents and vernacular and dialect. That's totally different from regional words. Just introduce a character by saying he or she has a strong Brooklyn, Southern, Irish, German, etc. accent. And use some regionalisms or foreign words for a sprinkle of character, like for example, if this person is like trying to speak English for the first time and you want to establish that she or he has a really like heavy accent, like do that, like show like phonetically render the way he or she would pronounce certain things, but don't like do that every single time the character speaks for the rest of the book. I had to go through my books with my Russian characters before they were published and root out all the phonetic rendering of accents, except for like maybe like 2 times or so to show that Ivan has a very heavy accent, and like a few other times like very, very rare and judiciously for a very specific reason, and like not for like a whole like long like paragraph or dialogue, just like maybe one sentence or two, and again, that's only to show, this person is like speaking English for the first time or has a very heavy accent, and then just like throughout, just like refer to the accent, or like the accent is like lessening or learning to like do things so the accent is less pronounced, or maybe the accent eventually disappears. But maybe I'll do a future video on that. So thank you for very much for watching to the end. Again, I'm sorry if I've been rambling too much, but maybe, I don't know when my next video will be. Maybe sometime before the end of the week, or definitely on Monday or Sunday. And please consider liking, sharing, subscribing if you haven't already. And thank you again for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks. Bye.